It's hard to bring in scares in D&D nowadays. Adventurers have so much power that it's tough to keep them on their toes. But what if there was a monster that could match their power with pressure? One that never stops hunting the party. And even if they take it down, it keeps coming back again and again and again. But I didn't make a stat block. Instead, I created rules that let you turn almost any creature into a relentless pursuer, like Mr. X, Nemesis, or Lady Dimitrescu. In this video, I'll take you through the monster creation process. Then I'll show you how these rules help you maintain tension with an undying stalker. Welcome to my wife is the MC, where we take pop culture to pen and paper. I'm V, and I've been running and designing D&D Homebrew for 10 years. Today's homebrew is the Undying Stalker. This is my tribute to the Dungeon Jam community's monthly themes. This month is Trick or Trouble, and my homebrew happens to do both. First, it gives you all the tricks to create your own Nemesis-Style stalker from almost any stat block. Second, it saves you a lot of trouble by giving you several tools to run your stalker in a D&D session. It's inspired by modern video games that build tension around one central pursuer. Think of games like the RE2 remake or Alien Isolation, which both came out at around 2018. Oh, what do you mean Alien Isolation was 11 years ago? God damn! Resident Evil is the main inspiration for this homebrew, but you don't have to be familiar with the games to use this document. It's also free, and I'll tell you how to get it later. It's designed to be setting agnostic, so you can use it to add monster-driven tension to any campaign setting. But you can't have monster-driven tension without a monster. So, are you comfy at the table? Let's open up the Undying Stalker homebrew and make our monster. The first chapters of the Undying Stalker focus on creating your new nemesis. But before you start making one, you'll need a concept, especially if you're not familiar with similar media. Chapter 1 offers some examples to inspire ideas. These are sample avenues you can weave into your ongoing narrative. The Enforcer, for example, leverages your party having stepped on the toes of a powerful faction. And let's face it, they probably already have. But this faction dabbles in unethical experimentation on live subjects, creating horrible monstrosities. So they send in their Enforcer, an imposing and stoic figure that slowly mutates into something more grotesque as it tangles with the party. And it's called the Nemesis. So, now you have a concept, now you'll need a stat block. But a stat block means one thing: balance. One of my goals for this homebrew is to make sure DMs can use it to match their party at any level. And counterbalancing is tough enough as it is, and introducing new elements is a lot to take in, especially for newer DMs. So rather than making a bespoke stat block, I designed mechanics that work with any stat block instead. Well, almost any stat block. Because Chapter 2 offers guidelines for picking the base creature that becomes your Undying Stalker. Think like an Umbrella Corporation researcher, and your first task is to pick the best specimen. 3 characteristics make for a good nemesis: persistence, threat, and surprise. Persistence is the creature's staying power. So pick one that's easy to hit but hard to put down. Threat is what makes the nemesis scary, and an easy indicator of threat is how much damage it deals. As a rule of thumb, the creature should be able to drop a character to at least half HP in one turn. Experienced tables might think that's a little bit light, especially when it's outnumbered 1 to 4. But the nemesis is a marathon, not a sprint. Once it's drained enough resources, its middling damage output suddenly becomes a very real threat. Finally, surprise is what keeps things interesting. The party will face your nemesis several times throughout the adventure, so if it's a one-trick pony, it becomes less of a threat and more of a nuisance. Or worse, a slog. But surprise doesn't affect the stat block pick much, so we'll put a pin on that until we get to Chapter 3. The rest of this chapter delves deeper into the kinds of attributes you should look for in a stat block. It's organized by priority, starting with challenge rating, simplicity, defense, and offense. Challenge rating is less of a parameter and more of a filter, and it sets your nemesis difficulty. Simplicity helps you run the nemesis, since you'll be adding more traits to the stat block later on. Defense and offense considerations are also here, which tie into the persistence and threat from earlier. So if I'm making a nemesis for a party of 4 level 3 adventurers, an Etten makes for a great starting point. Challenge-wise, it falls somewhere between moderate and high difficulty. It's also a very simple stat block with no special traits. Its defenses make it easy to hit, but has enough chunk to last a round or 2 of salvos. Granted, it does punch a bit higher on the intended threat, and the document acknowledges as much. So I added more guidelines, like making sure it spreads its damage over multiple attacks, or cutting it in half with a successful saving throw.
But V,
I hear you ask.
an Etin is large. Nemesis is tall, but he isn't large in 5e's terms.
And you'd be right. So I added flavorful considerations like size, speed, creature type, and traits. But at this point, you're probably thinking,
I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of the monster manual.
honestly, neither do I. So I included guidelines on modifying these traits instead, to ease analysis paralysis. It'll tell you what to look out for when you change these things, like size or creature type, so you know what to expect. In the case of our Etin stat block, let's shrink that down to medium for the Nemesis. If the stat block is the main ingredient, Chapter 3 is where we start cooking by adding custom traits. These are grouped according to the characteristics we covered earlier. The persistence category is the doneness of this Nemesis state. In the Resident Evil remakes, the games ramp up tension with an immortal pursuer. But pure immortality isn't fun, especially for players who enjoy combat. So how do we let players flex on the Nemesis while staying functionally immortal? That's where the undying rejuvenation trait comes in. It lets players take down the Nemesis, but only temporarily, because reducing it to 0 HP triggers this trait. When the Nemesis falls, it instead goes down to 1 HP and begins regeneration for 10 minutes. When that timer ends, it goes back to hunting the party at max HP. You can't cheese it either, because it's immune to damage while regenerating and it wakes up early if you linger too long. This trait is mandatory, but you can add one more persistence trait from this list. Writhing Mass, for example, makes range attacks harder to land and creates difficult terrain and melee. The threat category adds a bit of spice. These traits don't always add damage, but they help with positioning and battlefield control. Choose one trait from this list and add it to your Etin Nemesis stat block. Let's take Tendril Whip as an example. It changes the reach of its melee attacks to 15 feet and reels in the target into melee range on a hit. Last is the Surprise category, and this adds some sauce to our steak. There are two types of surprise traits, a passive trait and a limited use trait, and you add one of each. It lets the Nemesis bust through walls and causes surprise when it starts combat in this way. Limited use traits are the real game changers, and the Nemesis regains them whenever undying rejuvenation triggers. My favorite is Toxic Barb. It's a vicious poison that the Nemesis can trigger with a melee attack. When a character is afflicted with this, it has disadvantage on attacks and checks. But that's not where the real danger lies. Every hour, the target has to make con saves or suffer one level of exhaustion. It's not a death sentence, however. Casting Lesser Restoration or drinking antitoxin suppresses its effects for an hour. In fact, Greater Restoration outright cleanses it. But the lethality or resource drain isn't the reason why it's my favorite surprise trait. Because there's an alternative way to cleanse this without needing a level 5 spell. The party can craft a special antitoxin using alchemist supplies, but they need a sample of Nemesis blood. That flips the script, because now the party has a good reason to hunt the hunter. I really wanted something that could make the players go, "Whoa, it could do that?" But I know this can get really tedious and it stops being a surprise if the players know what's coming. So I added a rule where you need to swap the limited use surprise trait whenever the party drops the Nemesis. And now we have our Undying Stalker. It tastes like Etin but flavored with 2 persistence traits, 1 threat trait, and 2 surprise traits. And all this talk of food made me hungry. We'll be diving into how to run our Nemesis in a bit, but first, let's take a short snack break with today's sponsor, The Ugly Goblin's Cookbook. Friend of the channel, The Ugly Goblin just launched his Kickstarter. It's a D&D supplement where you can harvest ingredients from monsters and cook them with your party. Each ingredient has unique effects, letting you make custom meals that grant various buffs. But beyond the mechanics, the book adds a lot of narrative flavor. Your players can even go on a personal quest to find specific ingredients, which makes for some really cool emergent storytelling moments. And this book covers a lot more than just cooking. It has rules for travel, exploration, and even resource gathering like mining, fishing, hunting, or foraging. You might still catch the special pledges that add your name in the credits or co-design ingredients with the Ugly Goblin himself. He's not particularly ugly, not gonna lie. The project is in its final stretch, and you can support it with my affiliate link in the description. Backing the project pushes it over the finish line and helps me fend off my wife's risotto addiction. So huge thanks to the Ugly Goblin for sponsoring this video, and thank you for supporting the channel. And now, back to the video. The Stalker tends to punch above its weight class because I want combat to be the party's last resort, or a fail state. So most of the rules for running the Undying Stalker happen around combat. But in typical D&D, that means a lot of stealth checks. And constantly making stealth checks while navigating a dungeon is difficult to run and slows the game down. So I needed to design rules that do 3 things. 1. Resolve the task of avoiding Nemesis without slowing the game. 2. Keep the tension high without obstructing the party from regular adventuring. And 3. Not trivialize the work you did kit bashing all these traits into a stat block. That's where Chapter 4 comes in. Running the Stalker. It uses pools to abstract and resolve various challenges quickly. Now I'll need you to stay with me here, because this is pretty different from how 5e usually does things. In this section, Seeking the Party, the Nemesis is on the prowl while the party tries to hide from it. First, all the players will make stealth checks and add the results into one stealth pool. This represents the time it takes for the Nemesis to find the party. For the next 10 in-game minutes, the party's free to dungeon crawl, investigate the facility, or whatever they need. When those 10 minutes are up, the Nemesis takes a search action and makes a perception or survival check. Subtract the Nemesis roll from the stealth pool and repeat every 10 in-game minutes until the pool hits 0. Think of the stealth pool as HP and the Nemesis rolls as damage. This mechanic creates windows for players to do what they need to do. The stealth pool also adds tension by knowing how little of it they have left, all while the monster chips away at it. No need for constant stealth checks, and no need to meticulously track where the party is relative to the Nemesis. Eventually, the monster will reduce that pool to 0. This ensures that the party won't just bypass the Nemesis for the entire adventure by casting Pass Without Trace. I'll be the first to admit that this isn't the perfect system. Using checks to create a pool can feel unintuitive considering 5e's format. And some of you are probably thinking how this might add more bookkeeping during a session. But give it a shot and see if it works for your table. I use this pools as HP concept at my own table, and it's worked out pretty well. At the very least, I like it better than adjudicating group checks. Keep a calculator handy if you want to try it out. So what happens when that stealth pool reaches 0? Typically, everyone rolls initiative. But if resources are low and TPK is imminent, the party might want to run. That's where the Chasing the Party section comes into play. Now, I'm aware of the DMG's chase rules. They're pretty solid, just a little more involved, and it's closer to running combat, which is more than what the Undying Stalker needs. To compare, a chase in the Undying Stalker homebrew is resolved with only 2 sets of rolls. This uses the same pool mechanics from earlier, but instead of a stealth pool, players make a chase pool. They fill it by making any skill or ability check as long as it doesn't repeat. Then, the Stalker makes its own checks. It can be any ability check, like strength or dexterity, and it adds its proficiency bonus to each roll. It then makes a number of these checks equal to the number of characters it's chasing. So if it's a party of just 2 characters, the Nemesis makes 2 checks. Add the Nemesis results together and reduce the party's chase pool by that total. If the chase pool is reduced to 0, the Nemesis catches up and combat ensues. Otherwise, it loses track of the party and the party makes a new stealth pool. That was just a quick outline on how stealth pools and chase pools work, because the chapter covers edge cases too, like entering combat while in stealth or splitting the party. Expect sessions to cycle between stealth pools and chase pools with a combat encounter every now and then. But if you're concerned about the order of operations, I added a flow of events in Appendix D. But there's more to Chapter 4 than just hide and seek. It also has guides that cover game prep, resting, and even escape rules. Now, it might sound unfair that the Undying Stalker is, well, undying. So how do you destroy it? Chapter 5 has several ways to destroy the Nemesis, and it's up to you to pick the method. Each method has 2 phases, setting the stage and the final showdown. And this chapter also uses pools, but it flips the roles. Because each method has a predetermined pool called a staging pool. It represents the characters setting the stage for their final confrontation with the Undying Stalker. Let's take the Sustained Disintegration method as an example. Here, the party finds a hidden weapon meant to destroy the Nemesis, but they first need to power the systems before they can use the weapon in battle. This method has a staging pool of 100 points. To reduce it, each player needs to make a specific skill check, which is investigation or perception for this method. Add the rolls together and subtract the total from the staging pool. This is called an attempt, since it'll take several rolls to reduce that pool to 0. Each attempt takes 10 in-game minutes as the party powers up the arena. Now you might be asking, is the Nemesis still stalking the party during this time? Sort of. By design, the Nemesis can't interrupt the party during an attempt, but as soon as the attempt ends, it hits the party's stealth pool. So while they're scrambling to set the stage, the Nemesis will eventually sniff them out between attempts. Call it an acceptable break from immersion, because tracking asynchronous events in D&D is a massive pain. Now when the staging pool is 0, you move to the final showdown. Each method gives an approximation of the map and lists all the interactable elements. In Sustained Disintegration, it's an open space with energy vents along the walls that connect to the secret weapon. This part is definitely a combat encounter, but it has a light puzzle element. Push the vents into the wall to charge the weapon, and once the weapon's charged, they can finally give the Nemesis his stars. There are other methods in this chapter, like dunking it in an acid bath or injecting it with a degeneration virus. And all these methods bypass the Nemesis' undying rejuvenation and confirms the kill. And once the dust settles, treat your players to the rewards in Chapter 6. Rewards range from unique feats and custom magic items to plain old XP. You can find the Undying Stalker rules in the second link in the description. I know this video is mostly for DMs, but I was supposed to actually include a Nemesis-inspired subclass. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, so subscribe to get notified once that video comes out. But if you can't wait, you can get the beta version of the subclass by becoming a Ko-Fi or Patreon member. It also grants a bunch of perks, like exclusive Discord access and members-only subclasses. I recently released the Path of the Aberrant Entity, an alien-style barbarian subclass. Memberships or backing the Ugly Goblin's cookbook helps keep the lights on. And it also helps me fund MC's risotto addiction. Wait, I already mentioned that last bit. Membership also sees your name among these magnificent mallards you see on screen and gets a special shoutout. MC, please do the honors.
Hello, it's me, the Mallard Quen, and we'd like to thank these magnificent star mallards. Gamer Gaming, Storm Starshine, Yggdrasil 88, Bryant LW, Coinop 1989, KV, Piku, and Cosplay Battle. Right as we were recording this video, we also got the new Mallard Royal Guard. Everyone welcome Mr. Phantom. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you so much for watching till the end, guys. We really appreciate it.
I'm committing Exade to somewhere in the middle of December now. There's kind of a lot happening IRL, including a 2-week break at the end of November. By the way, I'll be joining Extra Life again. Be sure to catch me over at the Game Masters Guy channel on November 8th. It'll be great, I promise. Anyway, huge thank you to the Ugly Goblin for sponsoring this video, and until next time, my wife and I hope you have a great day ahead.